This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Monday, December the 8th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Greg Smith is back at the scene of the crime. He's produced the program. You'll be speaking with Greg when you pick up the phone to give us a call to get in the queue and on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. Final check-in at the Para Cup. So, we've gotten the best of the United States in some of the most recent World Championships, but the Para Cup, not so much. So, go to the final, of course, Canada, the United States. The States shut us out 2-0 to take the Para Championship. That's 10 consecutive wins for the Americans. They have 12 titles in total. So, yeah, we can nip them at the Worlds, but that Para Cup, maybe no such luck. Liam Hickey, of course, recorded his 100th assist for Canada in this tournament, so pretty cool stuff. And Abby Newhook, don't look now, she scored in 3 straight games for the Boston Fleet in the Professional Women's Hockey League, looking good while doing it as well. All right, let's go back to last Friday afternoon. I was pretty interested and curious as to who Canada would face in the upcoming World Cup as one of the 3 hosts, ourselves, the Americans, and the Mexicans. And here's what we found out on the soccer side. So Qatar and Switzerland are in our group, or our pool, and the other team yet to be determined. Some of the qualifiers have not all yet got through, so there's 6 teams that we don't know who they'll be yet, but it looks a lot like Italy, with the number 12 ranked team in the world, will come through eventually. Maybe Wales, but it looks like Italy, and that'll be Canada's first game. So it was a 2-hour event at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., and man, oh man, it was awkward 2 hours of television. And there was plenty of cringe-worthy moments during that broadcast. Oh, my goodness. And poor old Wayne Gretzky, one of the very best hockey players of all time. We loved Gretzky when we were growing up watching hockey. He struggled mightily. Pretty embarrassing stuff for the great one. He knew exactly what countries were going to be in his bowl and then couldn't pronounce a bunch of them. Really not great. But anyway, we've got Qatar, Switzerland, and maybe the Italians. All right. I get a ton of reaction to the Canada Food Price Report, the vast majority, of course, via email. And you've seen the numbers, you've heard the numbers. Forecast it spike between 4 and 6% next year. Beef, 7% likely coming, an increase in price. So it's a huge problem. Last week we talked about the Competition Bureau and some things that could or should be done to try to ease the burden at the grocery store. And remember, we were told that dropping the consumer carbon tax would reduce the price of groceries. That didn't happen. People keep telling me the industrial price on carbon, you remove it, it'll remove will stabilize food prices. You can read reports that are all over the place. It's generally, the consensus is in and around 1% of prices on food is directly related to the industrial carbon price. But anyway, you want to take it on, let's go. Farmers across the country are trying to join forces to lobby the federal government to impose a cap on profits for the large grocery retailers. As we've said before on the show, the prices are skyrocketing all the time, and it's getting completely out of control. But the margins for grocery items is pretty thin for the big retailers. They make huge money. Well, of course, you all see the money. We're talking about financial services and pharmaceuticals and clothes and a variety of other things that they sell in the grocery stores that really tops up their profit. But the farmers are trying to advocate for a cap on the profits. Not a whole lot of detail insofar as how this is going to work. Some of it sounds a little bit flimsy. All right, let's get some of the numbers insofar as profit goes. 3 giant grocery chains, Loblaw, Sobeys, Metro, reported $100 billion in sales last year, $3.6 billion of profits. And there is the sense or the smell of a monopoly out there. That's the big 3. But if you add in the big 5, adding Costco and Walmart, they represent some 80% of the groceries sold in this country. So what kind of cap can actually be brought forward on groceries and grocery profits, grocery-related profits for these big 5? But the problem is, all of the pressures facing the small and medium-sized grocers, no one wants to attend to them. Like, I'm not really sure what the holdup is here. There's a political victory available for sure if the federal government even addresses the price of food. And, the Prime Minister himself on the campaign trail said things like, judge me based on grocery prices. Well, that judgment is not very welcome to Mr. Carney, I would suggest, given where we see the prices going. Let's keep going. I don't know why this continues to be news, but anyway, let's bring it forward. So we know the NLC is sitting on some $3.2 million of American inventory, American alcohol. Other provinces have gone back to selling and reordering American products. Some provinces are now just beginning to sell them off, like in Nova Scotia, and they have $14 million worth of inventory. Let's not see this wasted, though. I mean, let's be real. So there's a few options available here. Either put them on the shelves, and you want to continue this poking a stick at the Americans, just stop ordering some replacement product after we sell this off, if that's a decision made by the government. Now, it's not up to the NLC. It's up to the government itself. If you don't want to sell it on the NLC shelves, how's this for an idea? With the charities and not-for-profits that are struggling mightily out there, why don't we just give it all to them? Let them sell liquor raffles or liquor trees like it's such a popular holiday season opportunity to raise some money. So one way or the other, let's just not see this $3.2 million worth of American inventory poured down the drain. That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So either sell it in the stores or donate it all to charity. Let them create a few liquor tree raffles, raise a few bucks during the holiday season. I don't know. Anything's better than pouring it down the sink, I would think. All right. Seems like an early beginning to the seasonal influenza season. So the story that I read this morning comes from Ontario, and they're talking about a huge uptick in early diagnosis of seasonal flu, predominantly amongst children. So we know how it can spread so quickly, whether it be in a daycare setting or at the school setting proper, or even in some of their social activities, whatever the case may be. And you're going to hear a lot coming from public health officials, once again, about one of the most problematic conversations in the country, on top of a variety of others, is vaccination. So it's up to you. You talk to your doctor about whether or not the vaccine is the right move for you. There may indeed be a mismatch between the most popular strain that's going around and the vaccine that's been created for this year's flu, but I'll leave it up to you. There's no mandates, none of that conversation is happening, but it looks like the flu season is off to a pretty significant start for this time of year. The general peak is around the end of December and into the beginning of January. So again, let's put that out there because it's of course important. It's your health. All right. The Auditor General report. Every time we get one, people use the same words to describe it. It's scathing or whatever the case may be. But the one last week is infuriating. So it talks about the number of recommendations that have been made through the performance reports that remain unimplemented. About a quarter of all the recommendations between 2018 and 2022 have not been implemented. The report they released last week says 15 recommendations have not been implemented. Half of those are over 5 years old. And these are across a variety of government departments: transportation, tourism, education, and justice. And then, of course, they look at the NALCO report back in 2022, which, of course, is now Newfoundland Labrador Hydro. All right. So they talk about these recommendations to improve efficiencies. And as a result, maybe, just maybe, for some actual savings. So the Department of Justice itself has not implemented 6 out of the 7 recommendations made to them. All right. So the whole conversation regarding provincial courts and the lack of access to provincial courts and the change of operations is a huge problem. Basically, people think it boils all the way back down to staffing pressures. And we know that the current Minister of Justice and Public Safety, Helen Conway-Ottenheimer, certainly can't pin any of the blame on Ms. Conway-Ottenheimer, but a creation of yet another working group, what's going to be achieved? If it's a staffing issue, that needs to be the key focus. Now, all parties on the campaign trail pledge things like hiring more police officers and hiring more Crown prosecutors, and that's got to include a real focus on sheriff officers and other administrative staff required to keep the provincial courts flowing. So this is a big problem. So what do we do about this? You know, when Denise Hanrahan, who's always welcome on the show, she says she finds the findings are concerning. They absolutely are concerning. So what do we do about this? Every single time the AG releases a report, government of the day will say, we understand and appreciate and accept, and we will work towards implementation. But yet, after that news conference, after that week of the news cycle goes, then what? By the look of it, a quarter of recommendations made between 2018 and 2022 have not been implemented. Maybe there's a need for an annual day for the Premier and various ministers to give us a detailed update as to where we are in the recommendations. If there's a reason why one recommendation is not going to be implemented, tell us why. And if not, give us a timeline update about when you're going to see the work actually get done. The work that's done by the Auditor General's team is critically important to all of us as taxpayers and for the quality of governance. But I'd like to see a little bit more action on the implementation front, because that's just unbelievable. All right. Not to be surprised, the federal government has now said that they accept no liability, have no responsibility for the presence of PFAS, forever chemicals, that have contaminated wells in southeastern Torbay. All right. It's an uncertified class action lawsuit at this moment in time. The allegations are clear that the use of firefighting foam at St. John's International Airport, early 80s all the way through 2004, those toxic chemicals, the allegation is, they seeped into the water system, and now consequently all these wells are spoiled. Now, it's sort of a strange way they put this forward. Transport Canada, who's of course responsible for all these federally indexed contamination sites like airports right across the country, they say they have exercised due diligence in addressing potential contamination. But at the same time, they continue to supply bottled water for those wells that have been polluted or contaminated. All right. In addition to that, they say, well, they are not liable for anything, and this all has yet to be tested in court. But at the same time, they say, well, they didn't say, this is a paraphrase, we're not liable, we deny any responsibility, but if we are, there's others to blame, like 3M and the Mueller Water Products, who supply the firefighting foam to the airport authority to conduct those operations. So while they continue to deliver bottled water, which gives the air of some responsibility, and if there is indeed some liability, it's not just our fault, it's two private sector companies. So I'm sure the folks who are part of this class, they're not surprised, nor are their lawyers. And the yet to be certified class and yet to be tested in court, so we really don't know what the outcome will be. But if it's PFAS chemicals, and the PFAS chemicals are in the area because of firefighting exercises at the airport, maybe, just maybe, there is a direct link. What do you think? All right, get some numbers that came out last week regarding jobs. All right, so the jobs report is good or bad depending on who you ask. All right, unemployment rate has dropped to 6.5% in November. That's coming from Stats Canada once again. They talk about it bringing it to a 16-month low. The consequences are probably won't see any downward adjustment in the Bank of Canada interest rate. I believe the announcement is coming on Wednesday. All right. So when we talk about 54,000 jobs, it is important to point out that the bulk of them are part-time. I mean, these are kind of predictable numbers, right? It's a good thing that the economy has added jobs, even though private sector investment in the private sector performance is pretty stagnant. But when we get to this time of year, and they go on to talk about the difficulty for young people to find a job, that's between the ages of 15 and 24, come the holiday season, retailers ramp up, the jobs are part-time, and then they go away after the holiday season. So not going to say that this is bad news, because it's not bad news, but for folks who are really singing at the top of their lungs how great it is, the most of them are part-time, and most of them are related to the holidays. So yes, there's some good news inside it, but we also have to break it down a little further. What does not get reported when we talk about updated unemployment numbers and jobs added numbers is for folks who have stopped participating in the labour market, because that's a key demographic here as well. You're not considered unemployed if you're not actively looking for a job, right? So again, adding 54,000 jobs sounds good, feels good, is good, but when the most are part-time and the labour market participation rate is also poor, then I don't know. You tell me what you think of it. All right. Stick with Ottawa here for a second. Okay. So there's a motion to be tabled tomorrow in Parliament by the Conservative Party of Canada regarding the proposal and the MOU between Alberta and Ottawa to build a pipeline to BC's North Coast and all that goes with it. So here's a quote coming from Mr. Poilievre. The only thing that needs to happen for the project to go ahead is for the federal government to Mark Carney to get out of the way, grant a permit, let the construction begin. Few caveats added. Okay. The motion is also going to add an appropriate adjustment to the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act while respecting the duty to consult Indigenous peoples. All right. So that's pretty much what the MOU says anyway, and the province of British Columbia will have a say. And the pipeline at this moment in time is mythical. It's remarkable to me just how big a conversation it is across the country. Of course, it's a big conversation in the province of Alberta, and some 25-ish% of their GDP directly related to oil and gas production. But on the national front, where this conversation is being held, the oil and gas sector is around 4% of GDP, but yet this becomes one of the biggest conversations in the country. So this is just, opposition parties play a critical role, and this is what opposition parties do. But it's a lot of theatre. I mean, if the hope is to embarrass some Liberal MPs from Quebec or from BC or anywhere else in the country, I'm not so sure how that advances the cause of the possibility of a pipeline to be built. And you know who's not talking about it in any great length? Private sector companies who might be interested in building a pipeline. In addition to that, I don't know how anybody on the federal government level is being blamed for Danielle Smith signing onto an MOU which sees a 6-fold increase in their industrial carbon tax, their tiered pricing system. And yes, it's the province of Alberta that was desperately seeking investment into the Pathways Alliance, which is basically their carbon sequestration, which is owned by a consortium of oil companies that operate in the oil sands. So it's a non-binding motion. It's not going to go anywhere. There may indeed be some Liberal members of Parliament come out with some egg on their face, but does that advance any cause regarding the pipeline? Of course not. And it's not because Mr. Poilievre or Mr. Carney or Elizabeth May or Don Davies or anybody has any real say in the law of the land as it pertains to consultations, but the put up or shut up motion that's being referred to, again, theatre. And last one. So the Americans have just released their new national strategy on security. And not good news for this country, not good news for Europe. And yes, we can talk about defence spending opportunities that could be, one, an activity garnered here in this province, whether it be submarines or in the tech sector, innovation, whatever the case may be. But the whole posturing of the Americans' thoughts on Europe and Canada, which apparently is now, in their estimation, a vassal state, and our sovereignty and our potential is apparently a national security risk to the Americans, it's all just such nonsense. It's even difficult to even think we need to talk about it, but we have to talk about it. And then I never thought I'd live to see the day that the proposed peace plan in Ukraine is being applauded by the Russians, of all people. It's remarkable. This is a direct quote coming from a Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov. The adjustments that we see correspond in many ways to our vision. The Russians are in favor of the plan. There's a need for economic and defense cooperation and collaboration between the world superpowers. That includes the Americans and the Russians. But since the attacks in 2001 in New York City and at the Pentagon, and the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, and one of the days of celebration in the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the USSR, was on this date in history, as agreed to by Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. So the Russians are in favor of the peace plan. What do you think of that? Oh, I want to put this out there. Last one. This is information given to me by someone working at the government, and it's about the conversation we have regarding the seniors benefit and the income supplement. It's been a popular topic, email and on the telephone. And so because people have changed and offices have changed, so has some of the contact information. So I'm always up for talking about the seniors benefit. And here's some new numbers, because if you're trying to call the number I gave out last week, apparently it's changed. I didn't know, no one told me, but here's the new number. If you're calling for inquiries inside the department, it's 709-729-3166. But also, given the fact it's administered by the Canadian Revenue Agency, which is tricky to deal with, the contact number at CRA to talk about the seniors benefit is 1-800-387-1193. I'll keep those numbers handy in case you didn't have a chance to jot them down or you're driving your car. All right, let's check in on Twitter, where VOCM Open Line follows there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. My favorite is when you join us live on the program. So when we go to this news break, this break, you pick up the phone, give us a shout. We'll talk about whatever's on your mind right after this. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Tony, you're on the air.
Good morning. Mr. Daly, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, Mr. Daly. I'm back home now in Newfoundland from Mexico, and I'm donating a piece of my land out at Point Verp Essentia for a healing center, crisis center, providing shelter, clothing, food, etc., medical support too. I'm just wondering if the public would be interested to, if they want, to donate materials to the project, and any other way that they can help out, right? Labor or materials, right?
How much land are you talking about here, Tony?
The first piece by the ocean, I've got two areas. One is right by what's called Black Pond, beautiful view of Placentia Bay, and then the other one, where I got to put an access road up, is up in a place called Kern Hill, and that too has a panoramic view, right? So it's a nice area, very nice area for to set up a facility, right, that's going to give people aid in crisis situations, right?
So, Tony, this is just a notion that you have that if there are takers out there to help you create something, because you simply have the land. There's no one else out there that's talking about partnering with you to build it or to staff it or anything. Am I on the right track?
Well, I'm at the beginning stages,
okay.
Right? So I'll be giving notice in papers and so forth that if people want to contribute labor or finances, they can do so. Right now, I set up an account at TD Bank and Royal Bank for anyone may want to donate, right? I did caregiving in St. John's years ago, so that's the area I've always been interested in, and I've been interested quite some time now to have one in Placentia, because there is no service basically between St. John's and I think Gander or Corner Brook has a facility, right? A shelter for addictions treatment, that sort of thing. So that's where I'm at with it. I mean, I'm fully committed to it, given that, I've done the work in the past. And plus, I did a study on a number of shelters, some 5 up on the mainland, seeing problem shooting, what's called writer's immersion, where you go into a facility or a situation and you don't let the people know what you're doing. You're just there acting as one of the clients to see problems, right? And then I wrote about it, of course, on my book on global issues.
Tony, do you want to just leave your number with Greg? If anybody has any interest in further conversation with you, they can give you a shout. How does that work?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, I appreciate your time, and thanks for the generous offer.
Okay, thank you so very much, Mr.
You're welcome,
Daly.
Tony. You're welcome. Take care. Bye-bye. And, the need for more treatment options, especially in rural, is obviously very real. I think it's fair to say, if you check the court docket today, crimes, petty and otherwise, there's a lot of relationships directly with issues regarding drug addiction and maybe people who don't have access to mental health supports. So while we talk about hiring more police officers and Crown prosecutors, the fact of the matter is there are probably plenty of people out there today who know they've reached the breaking point and they know they're going to need some help, whether it be with their addiction or something else. But they all hear the stories. It's the issue of getting into a detox before you get into a rehabilitation center. The distance between the two and the length of time given to you to actually treat your addiction, it's just not working. And consequently, we've got this cycle of issues, societally speaking. We've got this cycle of violence, the cycle of crime. And I just don't hear enough from politicians about acknowledging what the problems are on the ground. We can talk about hiring more cops. That's great. But more cops isn't going to do anything for your current drug addiction, because the backfill of drugs and drug supply, history is pretty clear on that front. We can do our level best, as we should. We should track down everybody trafficking, whether it be precursors to fentanyl or the cocaine or heroin or crack or whatever it is people are getting their hands on. The toxic and synthetic level of drug use, or the drugs themselves, is different than your dad's or your grandfather's era of drug and drug use. People are zombies. And the need for that physiological fix is causing an awful lot of upheaval in the community, and certainly the background and the root cause of an awful lot of crime. People ask me to put this out there more often than we do. Is the authority that some municipalities, and specifically here the city of St. John's has, in dealing with some of these trap houses, these drug dens, No one's suggesting that a city bylaw officer go into a drug den and try to dismantle a drug operation or to shut it down of their own accord, but the city does have more authority than it lets on. You know, they'll say that, well, we are not in the enforcement business. No, but there are some legal authority granted to you in the City of St. John's Act about doing more. People's communities and neighborhoods, some of them are absolutely gone to the dogs. It's scary. Imagine being a family just trying to live a peaceful life. Get to and from school, to and from work, be able to go out and play by the door with your children, but you're afraid to. I mean, that's no way to live. Let's get a break in here now. When we come back, we're going to get an update on some efforts put forward by the music community, try to raise some money and funds for our good friend Lex Griffiths. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let us go. Line number 4. John, you're on the air.
Well, good morning, Mr. Daly. How are you?
Doing fine, thanks. How about you?
Fine. Let me be one of the first to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
The very same to you, John. Thank you.
I'm trying to get into the festive season, and I'm running into some difficulties this morning. So I thought maybe a call to Open Line might help educate a few consumers and a few of our fellow Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who have relatives in the U.S. of A.
Okay, what's going on?
Well, I thought it would be a fairly simple procedure. Bring your package to the post office, get it sorted out and weighed and sent on its way, you know, with the usual forms filled out for customs. But apparently there's a whole new regime, a whole new list of requirements if you're thinking about sending any kind of a package to the United States. And I was so, what should I say, put off by Canada Post that I actually went to UPS, and they photocopied a litany of requirements if you dare to try and send something across the border to the United States.
So the big change happened at the end of August when the Americans removed what they called the de minimis exemption. So if I sent a package of value of a couple $100, I didn't have to pay any duties or any other fees. Now I do. And it's not the end receiver gets to pay it. I have to pay it. This has been a huge problem, especially for small business. Like you hear from the Craft Council. They're members who send packages into the United States, which is a certain percentage of the business that's dried up. It's gone because there's no profit in it if you have to pay that fee upon sending a package internationally, specifically to the Americans.
Well, let me quote you chapter and verse of the convenient pre-printed handout the post office gave me.
Okay.
As of August 29th, as you stated, duties must be paid before sending items to the U.S.
Yep.
A declaration ID is required indicating duties have been prepaid. Canada Post has partnered with Zonos to ensure duties are paid in advance. And here's what you have to do to prepay your duties. Download the free Sonos Prepay app available for iOS and Android devices in the Apple or Google Play stores to create a declaration ID. Then pay your duties before you even attempt to visit the post office counter. A web version is available at a certain .com site. And the tip they give you is remember to still complete your customs form at canadapost.ca or customs or in the Canada Post app. So that's for those grandparents such as myself who might want to send a package to the States. And the UPS requirements, Patty, are even more stringent. The gentleman I spoke with said they've had as much as 85% of their shipments to the States returned at various times.
It's ridiculous. I mean, there was already going to be tariffs and customs and duties required for a variety of goods, but that exemption was, I think the threshold was $800. If it was less than $800, it didn't have any fees or duties required. And it was extremely helpful for especially big, little, small businesses and people like yourselves who might want to send a Christmas gift over the border to family. Gone is that exemption. And consequently, it's going to be huge money. And I'm not surprised UPS sees that level of return because this just happened. I think you used the date August 29th. So, again, here we are in this nonsensical tariff trade spat with the Americans over a deal that they signed and call it the best deal ever. So it's frustrating.
Yes, I found it very frustrating. I mean, last year I was able to send. I mean, granted, now you had to list the item, but here's I'll give you a little quote of the UPS requirement just to give people an idea of what you're saying, how accurate your thoughts are. Detailed list of all contents going to each person. Example: sweater for Sally, $25. Teddy bear for Tina, $15.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes even in the past, if people wanted to put insurance on a package they were sending, you needed to detail what was in it just for verification of replacement cost. But nobody did it when we're sending down a package worth $100 worth of, whether it be shoes and teddy bears and doodads for a Christmas present. So, yeah. I mean, you're right. And I've heard this concern, but not very frequently here on the show. But here's that crunch time for the last minute sending of gifts. People will find out the hard way.
Yeah, they are going to find out the hard way, because that's how I found out. And, when I went to, I said, well, I'll try and be a little contemporary. Instead of going to the post office and badgering the postal clerk, I'll go online now and download my customs form and fill it out in advance and bring it in. And by God, I tell you, Patty, when I dug into it this morning, I spent 10 minutes at the postal counter at the place I usually go, one of the convenient pharmacies that have post office service, and then I immediately left them and went to the UPS store, and that's where I got their handout and their tale of woe.
It's a good public service announcement and conversation you've offered here this morning, John. Anything else you'd like to talk about while we have you?
No, that's it. I just, I happened to talk to someone in the newsroom asking if they had heard about this conundrum, and they suggested that no, they had not. They were not made aware it was this involved, and that perhaps I might like to take the opportunity to go on the air with Patty and educate some more of the many listeners you have as to what they might face when they do attempt to send some Christmas gifts across the border. And I do appreciate you doing it, John. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Okay, Patty. Stay well. Bye-bye. You too. Bye-bye. And to make matters even worse, the rationale offered is to try to stop the importation of illicit goods, including fentanyl. If you send it through the postal system, there's plenty of safeguards in place for things like understanding whether there be precursors and or fentanyl in its pure form being sent. But, for it to be now associated with a Christmas present of a teddy bear, now I got to pay duty on it up front as the sender. Wild times. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to local musician Dave White. Good morning, Dave. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How you doing?
Great today, man. How about you?
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad. Thank you.
Let's get a recap of what went on yesterday. Green Sleeves and upstairs is called what again?
Loose Tie.
Loose Tie, right. So it was a fundraiser for our buddy Lex Griffiths. How'd it go?
Oh, man, it was fantastic. It was a very special day. Amazing how quickly people come together, especially, with Lex. I don't think I've met anybody that doesn't know him and who isn't concerned about him right now. So very special day for sure, how it all came together.
Give us some idea. We know that there was live music for the bulk of the day and into the wee hours, and we can, knock off some musicians who gave their time and their talent like they always do. It's remarkable to me how active in this kind of arena that the arts community is.
Absolutely. We had 15 local acts, local legends coming together out of the blue and gave their time. Such a busy season too, and so many sponsoring business with donations and music equipment to make it work, spreading 15 acts over 2 floors. We started at 11 a.m. yesterday morning, and like you said, we went right till 3 a.m. This morning. And to make that work, it takes a lot of hands. And we had, even just to see the patrons coming out in such a busy season and supporting our buddy, and he's got a long road ahead, and everybody knows that. So I think it was amazing, and that was one of the lasting themes of the day. Was people were very touched by how amazing this community comes together, how quickly it comes together and works together. So great day all around.
Do you have a final tally on how much money was raised?
We don't have a final tally yet. I think some folks are still trying to catch up on a bit of sleep there. But we know that it did well, both in-house and online. We live streamed the whole event, and so there were donations coming in all across the board. So I'm sure there will be a post somewhere along the line of the final tally once we get that done.
And I know Lexi's now at home and recovering and potentially a long road ahead, and we have to respect his privacy. But just quickly, do you happen to know how he's doing?
Absolutely. I mean, we're not even 2 full weeks out from when he fell ill. So the recovery is a long road ahead. I mean, I don't want to say the worst is behind him, but I think we certainly hope the worst is behind him. Right now, like you said, we're respecting his privacy and doing what we can to support him. But definitely, we're lucky to still have him. And of course, there's many people that are rooting for him in his corner for sure.
Yeah, including me. So for you and all the other performers and the patrons and the techs and Greensleeves and Loose Tie itself, for everyone involved, bravo, good job.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for having us.
Well, happy to have you on, Dave. Have a great season. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks,
Thank
buddy.
you.
Bye-bye. Yeah, Lex, big part of the downtown music scene for a long time. And, you know, people just, I think, pigeonhole him into that. Even just look at what he's done for the downtown Santa Claus Christmas Parade. I mean, he's been a big part of that for, I think, around 3 decades. Right, Greg? Is that about the time frame? So, yeah, Lex has been an important figure out and about for a long time. Good guy. I wish him nothing but the very best and hopefully a full recovery. Let's get a break in. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 2. Leo, you're on the air.
Oh, good morning, Patty. How are you doing?
Doing okay. How about you?
Good. Nice to see the arts community coming together for somebody like Lex. Really encouraging.
And it happens all the time, you know. When I hear people bemoan the fact that there's money from the provincial government for things inside the arts community, whether it be music or otherwise, I just can't understand the criticism or concern, given the fact that how often, regardless of whether it be wildfires or an individual person's health, they step up to the plate every single time. And yet people bemoan the fact that there's ever a subsidy or some sort of grant coming their way. Anyway, they do good stuff.
Absolutely, Patty. I'm a retired theater arts teacher, and I've been involved with the arts community a very long time, and I see it time and time again. You know, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But the reason why I'm calling this morning is just it's a technical issue that I've often wondered about. There's a gas station / convenience store on Topsail Road who I guess since COVID have gotten to the habit of basically they've installed a window so that they can serve customers, via this window. And I just noticed there the other day that people go through that window and they're buying alcohol. And it's beer or whatever they're buying there in the liquor section of the store, and they're passing it out. The cashier passes it out, and they're putting it in the front seat. So, what is the law on carrying? Because I always assumed that you had to, if you were carrying liquor in your car, it had to be stored in the trunk or otherwise inaccessible to the driver or the passenger. Am I correct in saying that?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. Now, I mean, if I go to the liquor store and the grocery store on the same run, and I've got some groceries in my bag and a bottle of wine in the bag as well, and it's on the front seat, or I can reach it in the back seat, I don't know if I'm going to get taken to task for it by police, but that's an interesting question. I'm not entirely sure how to answer it.
I'm just wondering because, I'm wondering who, if let's just say, just for argument's sake, who would be liable if the police pulled somebody over? I mean, would the store be liable? Would the cashier be liable, or is it the driver in the vehicle? It's just an interesting, point of law. I'm not really sure what the standing is there.
I don't know, but I would hazard to guess that the driver would be held responsible. If we're talking about a bar and a bartender who has overserved and knowing that you're going to get behind the wheel, they do indeed have some liability. But as the entity just selling it unopened, I would imagine the responsibility lies solely with the driver of the vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, I know people do it all the time. I'm just wondering, because it got me thinking about whether, should we be storing, does everybody absolutely have to store their liquor in the trunk when they're transporting it from the store? I'm not sure.
I don't know. But, I mean, like, for instance, if I go to the liquor store and the grocery store at the same time, I don't put it in the trunk. I don't know if I'm breaking the law. I just put it in the back seat.
I don't
like
either.
I always do.
I don't either. But we were having this debate at the breakfast table the other morning. People were saying, no, you're definitely liable. You're not supposed to have it within reach. Anyway, I don't know.
I think that's accurate. How it gets enforced, I suppose there's a difference between having a 6-pack with 2 empties in it and 4 unopened beer on the front seat. You probably get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
But if someone finds
sure,
a
yeah.
bottle of wine in a bag on my back seat or even in the front seat unopened, I don't think I'm going to face a whole lot of repercussions from law enforcement. I don't think, anyway.
I don't think so either. No. Okay, thanks, Patty. Just curious point. I was just wondering if there was some clarification on that.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get a distinct, clear. And Greg just whispered in my ear that if it's sealed, then you're fine. And that makes sense to me. That's why I made the reference to a 6-pack with 2 empties and 4 unopened beer. You might find yourself in trouble. But if that sealed bottle is close enough, I think you're okay.
All right. Okay, thanks, Patty.
I appreciate your time. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye.
Yeah, and on that front, look, someone's called me the R word when I made comments about the NLC and the $3.2 million worth of American inventory. As I'm a you-know-what R word for even suggesting that we do anything but sell it. The only other thing I said was maybe, just maybe, if the government doesn't want to directly sell it for whatever optics reason, if you donated all of that to the various charities and not-for-profits to have like a little liquor tree raffle like you see very popular throughout the holiday season, maybe we can actually help some folks out and it won't be the government having to do a about face on it. That's all. I don't know how that comes across as a crazy idea. You can probably satisfy a couple of different birds with the same stone, right? Right. Let's go to line number 3. Sam, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty, how you doing?
Okay, how about you this morning?
Good. I spoke to you last week about a upcoming fundraiser we're doing in Marystown for the Helping Hands Marystown / Marystown Food Bank. Unfortunately, we got sidetracked with the storm last Wednesday, so we're going to put it off to tonight. So I want to put a plug in for that, and hopefully you have a huge listening audience, of course. So it's online at the Marystown Town Hall Facebook feed. It's hosted from the Town Hall. I'm going to host the event, and it's on from 4 to 7 this afternoon. People can make pledges by calling 709-279-1661, which is the telephone number for the Marystown Town Hall. Or they can also go on EMT transfers at helpinghandsmarystown@hotmail.com. So the crux of it all, we're just trying to raise some cash to support the food bank to buy items that people don't normally donate. So it's we had a Santa Claus parade here in Marystown yesterday, and a lot of people ran up to the float and dropped off produce, cans of food, but no one dropped off eggs, for example, or milk that are more perishable. So every food bank in the province needs donations, of course, but they also need cash to work from as well.
Absolutely, and it's always been a magic trick that I don't fully understand, just how far a food bank or the Community Food Association can stretch a $10 bill versus how far I can stretch it. Apparently they can, and obviously they can. So, yeah, cash is and always will be king when we're talking about trying to help some of these food banks.
Completely, and as you and I spoke last week, I guess if Webster had do a new word for the 2025, it would have been affordability. Because every turn, affordability is the issue. All through the states, geopolitical stuff in the states, it's all affordability issues, and in Canada and Newfoundland as well. And people are struggling, obviously. There's no doubt where people are going. And the forecast on the horizon for next year for affordability doesn't look much better than 2025. There's already projections that meat prices are going to go up 6% or whatever the number is. And it's going to be a rough couple of years for people. So if we can reach out as a community and help people enjoy a really good Christmas dinner vis-a-vis good healthy food to eat, that's a wonderful thing for the community to come together and try and do. So
exactly what's going to go on between 4 and 7? Simply they want to raise some money and get some non-perishables and the like, or is there any other draw to the event?
Well, the draw to the event is that it's a live feed from the Marystown Town Hall. We'll have speakers there. So the chairperson of the Marystown Helping Hands or Helping Hands Marystown / the food bank will be there. The president of the Marystown Connect Club will be there. They're co-hosting the event or co-sponsoring the event. I think the Mayor Brenton will be there to say a few words on behalf of the town. So we're going to turn it into an event. As you know, you're on live air all the time. And the mortal sin, I guess, on radio or even a Facebook stream is dead airtime. So we need to find a way to fill in that 4 to 7 airtime, of course. And we're going to be encouraging people, too, to call that number, 709-279-1661, and Helping Hands Marystown hotmail.com for EMT transfers. It seems the mode of transfers, monetary transfers these days, are almost not exclusively, but are weighted towards probably EMT transfers, especially with younger people. So we'll have an event. We'll talk about the history of the food bank here in Marystown. We'll talk about the history of the Connect Club. We'll talk about the town's involvement in good social justice projects like this. And I'm sure we'll fill up the 3 hours quite easily. There's a bit of a storm coming this afternoon, of course. We got hit by a storm last Wednesday. We're getting a strange storm today, just affecting the Burin Peninsula and parts of the Avalon. So it's a narrow band, but it's going to be a poor weather this afternoon. But in any event, we're committed to forging ahead with it. And hopefully if people are home, sort of in lockdown because of the storm this evening, they can take the time to call that number or to get online and do the EMT transfer. But again, 100% of the money goes directly to putting food on the table for families in this area, and not just Marystown, but the general area during this Christmas season. And I know, like, people are struggling. Of course, they have to struggle with the price of food, and the price of food has gone through the roof. Probably never going to come back down again, not where it should be. And so we just have to reach out now and help people to get through the season, because Christmas is really, we all, as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, we're the most giving people in the world, I think, per capita. And we need to reach out one more time and give again.
Oh, here. Good luck with it tonight, Sam. Good on you and everyone else involved.
Great, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to get the word back out there. Thank you.
You're welcome, Sam. Bye-bye.
Okay, you take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect storm stuff, right? You know, people involved in not-for-profits and in charities, it's always been difficult to raise money. And, you know, gone are the days where you just have that one big gala, the sit-down rubber chicken event with a live and a silent auction, and, you know, Bob's your uncle. They don't really work the way they used to. And then even for folks who are, you know, interested and have kind hearts and like to make, you know, a small or whatever size of donation they have the capacity for, whether it be the food bank or a single parents association or whatever your favorite charity is, donations are down, need is up. I mean, that's the kind of math that makes it extremely difficult to understand what the future is going to hold inside the envelope of cost of living, because just about everything, the price is up. I mean, there's been some relief when it comes to cell phone bills and the like, but insurance premiums, food, you name it, price is up. And the one that gets me probably more than anything else in the grocery store is the whole concept of shrinkflation. It's dastardly. Just pick a random item, block of cheese. So, just round numbers, 500 grams, $5. And now it's $6 and it's 400 grams. That's never going to change. This whole shrinkflation bit is here to stay. Let's get a break in for the news. When we come back, we're talking light and power and then whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number one. Jason, you're on the air.
Hello, Patty.
Hi there.
I'm trying to find a number for light and power where they'll do something. My next door neighbor has been living in his garage. His house had burnt down. The house has been there a year now, is done, and light and power is just giving him a run around. Maybe the next day, oh, I don't know, maybe the next day. It was -4 in his garage last night where he's sleeping. So he wants to get this power hooked up for Christmas.
No doubt he does.
Giving him a run around.
So you're looking for a number to speak with who?
Somebody high up.
At Newfoundland Power?
Yes.
Well, I don't have a number for anyone in an executive position there, so outside of general inquiries or customer service, I wouldn't really know where to point you. I can see if I can't find someone at a higher level at Newfoundland Power who's willing to share contact information with you. I'm happy to give it a shot. That's no problem.
Please and thank you.
Yeah, let's just have a quick look here. I got a little file going with numbers that I use sometimes.
Yeah. Well, they got water and everything all hooked up there and no heat. So he's probably going to have to go through another insurance claim if everything starts freezing.
Yeah, no kidding. Is this in St. John's? I'm sorry?
No, this is in the Port-au-Port area.
Out in Port-au-Port. Let's see if I can get Director of Operations. All right. Even if I just... So I'll give you a suggestion, and I will try to get you a personal contact. But if you just go to Newfoundland Power's website, they have a list of all of the directors, whether it be operations, Eastern Region, St. John's, Director of Technology, up and down the line. So there is a Director of Operations, both in the Western Region, and another one for Director of Operations overall. There's direct contact option right there. Same thing when it comes to the executive, Gary Murray, all the way down. So if you go to the website, you will indeed be able to send something directly to people in leadership.
What is the website? Sorry?
It's just newfoundlandpower.com.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. Good luck.
Okay, have a good day.
You too,
Bye-bye.
Jason. Bye-bye. Yeah, that's a tricky piece of business. And it's cold, man. It was cold this weekend. And, you know, it reminds me of back last February when all of the conversation was about how our bills had all spiked, and the argument made by Newfoundland Power is not only the temperatures but the wind. And the wind is the trick. On Saturday with the wind and the cold, it obviously took more effort, more money consequently to keep the house warmed up because it was bitter. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Todd Perrin. You're on the air.
Morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Doing okay. How about you?
Oh, not bad, boy. Colin, to pick up on the thread that you've been towing along for weeks and months and years probably now, but mentioned again this morning about food prices. And I guess the most recent report that's coming out suggesting that we're in for another 4 to 6% food hike next year or in the coming year. You know, I think that the conversation around this has been ongoing, but for some reason, and I can't quite figure out why, it just doesn't seem to be landing anywhere where any progress is being made on what can be done. I mean, I know, you know, I've heard, you know, discussed on your show and in other areas, people are like, well, you know, what can we do? You know, these are private companies. Like, how can we, you know, impact the prices of food? We can't get involved. But, you know, in a world where our, you know, not only our governments, but us as society, we've allowed our food, you know, system to be, you know, come under control of, you know, a very small group of companies. You know, we've set ourselves up for this. Like once, you know, 5 players, as you mentioned, control 80% of the food that people consume in this country, what do we think is going to happen? So without government intervention at this point, this is what we're in for, because, you know, I think that some way we've you know, inoculated ourselves to just accept, well, their margins haven't gone up and it's still only a 3 or 4% business. But when you got 3 or 4% of 80% of the market, I'd take that business any day. You know, so it's like it's really, really like just become completely unrealistic in a world where, yes, maybe there, as the numbers you threw out this morning, 3.6% margin on $100 billion in sales. Okay, it's 3.6% margin. But again, they control the market. We've got more Canadians than ever, you know, having to go to food banks. You know, the access to food has never been, you know, hasn't been worse in many, many years. And they got us all, you know, right where they want us. And what is the motivation for any of these corporations to, you know, not take all of our money? You know, it's not like they're selling, you know, fancy coats or fancy cars. You know, you can decide to drive a lesser vehicle. You can try and decide to live in a less expensive domicile. You can make a lot of decisions about a lot of the ways you spend your money in your life. But when you go to buy a loaf of bread and it's getting to be $5, $6, $7, what do you do about that? You know, so it really is something that I think that has to be, you know, people need to start marching to the steps of government buildings. I mean, like, guys, something has to be done somehow, somewhere. Yeah,
I mean, gone are the days where I throw the heels in the garbage. I can tell you that much for a loaf of bread.
Yeah, fair enough.
And, you know, it's an entirety of supply chain through retail shelf space. Gone are the family farms. It's all the mega corporation, the mega farms. Then you look at input costs. I mean, there's a lot of things here, but a couple of things get lost in the shuffle regarding the concentration of 80% in 5 companies. The Competition Bureau does some pretty important work. I mean, they're the people that, you know, came up with the fines associated with the bread price fixing scandal. But then even just when they looked at property controls and real estate covenants and the lack of competition and the control that the big players have in the distribution system, not just that shelf space, not just that price, but the work has been done. The investigations have been concluded as recently as 2023. Actually, there was a 2025 investigation into the thing regarding Sobeys, Loblaws. There was court orders brought forward to compel them to release data associated with how they use property control to block competitors. I mean, that should never be a thing in the first place. I mean, talk about another benefit or bonus to being in that business if you're one of the top fives. If you build and operate a store in a certain part of the city, for instance, there's actual real estate covenants that does not allow competitors to build within X amount of distance from your store. I mean, just look, Kemart Road, good example. The fast food joints right alongside each other. The automobile industry right alongside each other. Grocery stores, not allowed. Not allowed to do it. Just imagine if you were able to go to one segment, or pardon me, one part of the city or one part of the province and had options staring you right in the face in these big parking lots. Oh, well, I'll go here. Because people don't have the gas or the time or the money to go to No Frills for that deal, Sobeys for that deal, Dominion for that deal, Walmart for this deal. By the time you save the money on shopping around, you spent it all, burnt it in your gas tank. So what a benefit. They control the real estate. I don't think people realize that. That's a huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, look, the power that we as society and governments, being governments, have allowed to flow into these entities is it shouldn't happen in the food industry. Yes, if we want to make decisions as a society that it's more effective and efficient for us to give over our who makes our cell phones to one company because they figured it all out and maybe they can give us the best deal. Maybe you can get behind that. I don't know. I mean, people love access to cheap food, and we've lived in an era where food has been relatively cheap for many years. I mean, farmers have been struggling forever. The restaurant industry, you and I talked about many times, is notoriously low margin and very difficult industry forever. But these guys are able to rise above all of that, and because they're protected some way, somehow. And like you said, you can't go open up a grocery store. I live close to the Loblaws down here by the lake. I mean, I can't go open a grocery store up across the street, even if I wanted to.
Nope.
And I had the money, even if I had the money to invest in it and all that kind of stuff. You can't do it. So it's like, I think it's the type of thing that, look, we've been all, everyone's been bitching about it for years now, but it's really getting extreme. And somehow these companies get let off the hook. They don't make their money on food. They make it on financial services. They make it on whatever. Though they only make 3.6% or 4% margin or whatever. But that's what it's always been for the grocery company, and they've always done fairly well. And there's a lot of businesses since COVID, particularly, they have not maintained their margins. So what is it about the people that control our food industry that allows them to maintain their margins? Because no one will intervene and do it. And when people tell me that they don't make money on food, and again, I'll use the names because there's only 5 of them. You go to Costco and you can buy 3 chickens right now for $32 or $35 or $36, depending on how big they are. That's gone up significantly from what it used to be at Costco. You go to a Loblaws and 1 chicken is $21. Now, is he not making money on that chicken? Of course he is. He'd make money if he'd send someone out to Costco and brought it back and sold it in his shop. So there's clearly making money on food. So I'm getting tired of listening to the talking heads that come on the radio and talk about, oh, no, that's not where they're making their money. No, indeed they're not. They're in the food business. That's how they make their money. So, like, the time has come for some way, somehow, the people to coalesce, and not everybody just sit in their kitchen or stand at the cashier going, oh, Jesus, I can't believe that's $300. And that's for those of us that are fortunate to be able to spend that much money on it.
Yeah.
So like it's
groceries.
Like, I'm just flabbergasted by it all.
Yeah, I get it. And, I do think it's fair to say that they have various lines of business that contribute to their overall profits. But grocery and the setup of grocery stores is a science. It's like everything else in the world of retail. There's an absolute science behind it. On the perimeter of the grocery store, where the things are that people want, and the things that people need, the fruits and the vegetables and the meats and the frozen goods, there's a reason they are where they are. And that's where the big margin is. If we talk about chicken as an example, they're certainly making money on the chicken, and they're certainly making more money on chicken per unit than they are, say, on a tin of soup.
Yes, and there's a massive conversation to be had here. We won't even go down the road of you don't you can't go to the supermarket or to the grocery store or to wherever and buy necessarily what you want. You buy what they want to sell you, right? So you go in on any given day. Maybe they don't have this, maybe they don't have that, maybe they don't have this. And we here in Newfoundland and Labrador, often shrug our shoulders and go, we live on an island, supplies change and access. Yes, for sure, that's a factor. But it's also a factor of these companies, they don't need to give you what they want. I mean, you go to any market now. I mean, we're like sheep being run through, going to get sheep dip, lined up and pushed around, and take what we got at the price we got to give it to you, and go away and don't complain about it, because we don't make money on food. It's really, really getting ridiculous. The other thing I want to touch on before I leave you is, the impact that the price of food is having on a whole other sector, which is the sector that I'm in, the F&B restaurant business. The cost of goods for us, like everybody, has gone up. Like there is no real wholesaler left. Like there used to be many years ago. There the big companies, the Cisco's, the GFS's, all that kind of stuff. But the prices with those companies is, very much on par with what you see at Costco. Is why on Tuesday mornings when you go to Costco, half of the people who own and work in restaurants in St. John's are out there. I'm buying some of my food in the same place that you're buying it, and I'm paying the same price. It's a factor that is, if it continues to escalate the way it is, it's already difficult in the F&B business. It's getting near impossible in terms of the costs that are going into it. And that's an employer in this province that is somewhere between 10 and 15,000 jobs that you are going to see impacted directly, because the Loblaws and the Costco's and all those people have a 3.5% margin. That's the reality on the ground. It's getting to the point, and the consumer is squeezed in between, because how can the consumer afford to buy groceries in the supermarket and also go out to a restaurant once a month or twice a month or once a week or twice a year? The money is being pulled and concentrated into very, very, very few hands, and it's fundamentally going to change our society in the very near future. It already has. So I do think it's something for people to consider.
I get where you're coming from, but there's a huge difference in let's just use a round number, 4% margin for a small operation versus a big operation. It's all about volume when we talk about the billions of dollars of profit. Like if I had a small grocery store and my margin was 4% and I did X amount of business, but my Loblaws just down the road is doing the same margin, but it's doing X times 10,000. There's a reason why the profits are the way they are. The reason why the margins impact all different sides of operations differently. But points taken and understood. Anything else while we have you this morning, Todd?
Only to say, if we reduce, food business down to, which we have already. I mean, call a spade a spade. These volume businesses, it behooves the people who are in them to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Yep. And by getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it eliminates choice for everybody. And then once they got enough control, they jack the prices. So clearly that's what's happening. And anybody thinks that the people who prosecute, the people who own these big companies are altruistic and want to see, yes, they donate money to food banks and they give money to food banks. They send expired food to food banks. But call a spade, that's a tax write-off. When the wealthiest people in the country control our food system, this is where we end up. And so somewhere, somehow, there needs to be a pushback. Government needs to do it, and we need to push the government to push those guys, because this is not sustainable, what we got going on right now.
Appreciate the time, Todd. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. And I mentioned a story off the top about Canadian farmers advocating for pressures on the grocery retailers, but a cap on profit and whatnot. But that's not all they got into. And some of it is a little hard to understand exactly what they're trying to get to here. Another one of the resolutions that is brought forward is they're advocating for a 10-year pilot program looking at a guaranteed annual income of $50,000. A rate they say would rise with inflation year over year. There's another couple of things that are a little bit odd for them to put forward here. They're talking about calling on the union to create a national coalition pressing the federal government to purchase food directly from farmers to be sold at cost in a network of national, provincial, municipal, public grocery stores. Now, no details as to how that would work, but that's also a level of altruism which kind of flies in the face of the profit associated with the grocery store. But anyway, it's interesting stuff. Let's get a break in. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Just in reference to a bit of a bizarre email. I'm not even sure I really understood the crux of the point being made, but I kind of scoffed at some of the rationale offered by the American government when they removed the de minimis exemption So that's low-value imports into the United States. If it was cost less than $800, there were no duties required. And now that's all changed. Regardless of the value of the package, you have to pay the duty up front and jump through all the other hoops, as John pointed out earlier in the program. So when the point that someone took exception to was when I said it was offered under the guise of trying to combat illicit goods like fentanyl. And the email went on to say, why would I be cheering for people selling and using fentanyl? What? I mean, of course, I didn't do that or nothing like that. But it's just been a precursor used by the United States government for all of the things that are going on here. Apparently, like for the the tariff increases with Canada, talk about national security and immigration and drugs, specifically fentanyl. Look, for starters, every bit of fentanyl is potentially dangerous and can drop you dead where you stand, but the amount of fentanyl that flows from Canada into the United States is minimal. Same thing with migrants. And if I've got my understanding of border security right, is that it's a funny area to blame other governments. Border control at the United States is the responsibility of the Americans. Should we play an active role to ensure that as much drugs we can keep out of border trade is kept out of the equation? Of course. But it's funny how we don't make the same argument that the Americans are making regarding things like guns. If the majority of handguns illegally sold and used in this country are coming from the United States, then if they're blaming us for fentanyl, then isn't it their fault as it pertains to guns? It's the exact same argument. So I'm not so sure anybody on this program, certainly not I, have ever cheered for transporting fentanyl across borders, of all curious ways to hear anything. Because let's just not pretend anymore. It's not about the drugs. It's not about drugs at all. I mean, if you just see what's going on here, it's all pretty crystal clear. I mean, even just the concept, and I know we've got plenty of issues inside our own borders, but if it was about drugs and all the bombing of these boats coming out of Venezuela, and I mean, even if you look at the size of these vessels, how are they going to get to American shores? I mean, the arguments don't really make any sense. And then if you're talking about, well, it's about the drugs, well, boy, some of the pardons that have been offered recently are pretty problematic if you're worried about drugs. I mean, if the former president of Honduras, convicted and sentenced to 45 years for the conspiracy to traffic over $400 billion worth of cocaine into the United States and now walking free, it's not about drugs. If Ross Ulbricht, the founder of Silk Road, used on the dark web to sell drugs, is pardoned, it's not about drugs. Right? So, again, I just don't know how the conversations have got derailed into fantasy land here about what's happening. If it was all about drugs, everyone would be working together. But there's no collaboration. It's people just standing their own turf, standing their own ground, and making these wide, sweeping policy changes that who knows what's going to happen in the future. And insofar as the trilateral trade agreement that's in place, CUSMA, there's even thoughts the Americans are going to walk away from it in full. I mean, this is just bad faith. We signed a contract, everyone negotiated their piece of the pie, and that was it. Pens hit paper, and the trade deals were established. And then, you'll mention we've been talking groceries, and what's one of the bugaboos for the current president is things like supply management. Access for American dairy farmers into the Canadian market increased in CUSMA. And as a matter of fact, we allow more American dairy into this country than they allow into their country coming from Canadian dairy farmers. And there's also, things like people talk about socialism, capitalism. In the United States, they straight up practice socialism as it comes to agriculture. They grow as much as whatever they want, and soybeans or otherwise. When the market goes away, caused by the president, they will subsidize the farmers or let them go bankrupt, and the rich guys buy up all the land, buy up all the operations. As it pertains to dairy, people can like or loathe supply management, which sets quotas, which means we don't overproduce and consequently throw the milk away or the yogurt away or any dairy product away. In the United States, they overproduce and end up getting subsidized. So they don't lose, and the federal government comes to their aid. So when people complain about, socialism, you're going to run out other people's money, it's very selective in how people talk about that particular concept here. I guess it depends on your political leanings as opposed to what's actually happening. Let's get a break in. When we come back, good time for you to get on the show if you're in and around town. 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. We're taking a break and we're coming back.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Someone just asked me a very interesting question. It's about going grocery shopping, but even right now, this time of year, is they ask you if you'd like to make a donation. So whether it's at the liquor store, whether it be at the grocery store, and on the screen, they say something like, would you like to make a donation to a food bank? And the question being asked is whether or not that the big retailer takes credit for what would be a pretty significant donation to a food bank or the Community Food Sharing Association or whatever the case may be. Who gets the tax receipt? Nobody. They call it point-of-sale fundraising, and there's actually a carve-out exemption there. So me as an individual, I don't get a tax credit for it, but neither does the company. But it's a very good question because a lot of people probably think that, well, I'll just make a donation directly so that Loblaws or Walmart or Costco doesn't get credit for my donation in the form of some sort of tax receipt because they don't get one. And it's a good question because I think a lot of people probably wonder the exact same thing. So it's a flow through as opposed to the regular way you might make a charitable donation. So that's a very good question, and I bet you a lot of people have the exact same one. And then it goes down to some other cost savings that have been a part of some of the corporate profits in the grocery retail is the automatic self-checkout. Like, some people might appreciate the fact they don't have to stand in line as necessarily as they might have to go to a human being cashier. And for very small in and out items, like you need to buy just one apple or a 2 liter of milk or what have you, and you zip through the self-checkout, okay, it absolutely long-term saves them money. And how do I know that? Because they're doing it, right? They save on human resources costs because you don't have to have a pension plan or any other contributions for a robot versus how you have to treat your human staff. So then they try to cry the blues on a couple of fronts there. Number one, they're saving money. And some people like the self-checkout. Good enough. You do whatever you want. It's your time and money. But while they make cash savings on that front and on that play, what they also do at the exact same time is cry wolf about the increase in shoplifting. Part of it is the problem you created. Like, if I had no other way to get out of the store but to go through an aisle where I have to go past the cashier, unless I have something stuffed down my pants or whatever the case may be, it's probably going to be a better opportunity for the staff to catch me. And also you can have security in close proximity walking around the cashier aisles to ensure that people are not robbing food. But at the self-checkout, it really does have a lot of honor system built in. I don't know exactly how the technology works, but like, for instance, if I take something out of my bag or out of the cart, scan it, I can't even put it back in the cart. I got to lay it on the little table there, the tray, so that it registers a reset so I can scan my next item. But you know full well, a lot of the increase in shoplifting comes because you don't have to interact with a human being to get out of the store. So if I had like a shop in my bag because I didn't get a cart because I only needed 4 little things, what's the possibility for one of those little things to remain in the bag? And you go through the process of scanning your other items, and out you go. So in one hand, they're saving money with the establishment of these self-checkouts, and at the exact same time, it's reduced their security level. Shoplifting is up, and then they cry the blues because of a problem that they created. Something else that's worth reminding folks is because that is the facts, and shoplifting is up across the board at just about every level of retail. When you leave the grocery store, unless they have some sort of proof that you did something wrong and you stole something, you don't have to stop and be quizzed or have your receipt examined and your bag, the contents of your bag examined. You just don't have to. You are not obliged by any law in this country to stop for that. Now, someone will immediately point out, well, they do it at Costco, but it's actually terms of your membership at Costco. It says it right therein. You will have to pass by and have you pass your receipt along and have it signed off by an employee of Costco before you get out. So you actually signed up for that as a term of your membership, but we don't have memberships unless you're at a co-op. You don't have a membership at Sobeys. So if they think you stole something, they got to be able to prove it. They can't just stop you. So it's probably something important to remind the listener. And it's kind of frustrating. I've never been stopped, thankfully so, knock on wood. But if you haven't done anything wrong, just that public spectacle of being stopped and somebody going through your bags and checking your receipt, if you didn't do anything wrong, that's a really unfair experience to have to endure because you went somewhere to shop and you used the self-checkout that the company provided. Anyway, we can always talk about food and grocery prices because it doesn't matter who you are going to vote for. We all have to shop. We all have to eat. One more on the House of Assembly. So I'm pretty confident in saying that during the campaign and while the PCs were in opposition, talking about how few days that the House is open. I believe last calendar year was 49, which just doesn't feel like enough, even though there's an argument to be made that, maybe, just maybe, the House being opened isn't as efficient at getting the people's business attended to as it should be. But I'm also pretty sure that during the campaign we were told, especially when there was three requests for judicial recounts came forward, pretty sure I heard the Premier say, once all the MHAs are sworn in, and the last one to be sworn in is the current Minister of Education, Paul Dinn, who was successful in the challenge brought forward by Dan Bobbitt, who was his Liberal challenger. So they're all sworn in. But the House remains unopened. I'd like to see it open, even if it's just for one specific purpose. If both the Liberals and the Tories and the NDP and the Independents have talked about the importance of a 50, 60-year definitive agreements currently in the MOU state with the province of Quebec and Hydro-Quebec regarding the Upper Churchill and Gull Island, if it's as important as it is, and as the politicians have told us it is, then let's reopen the House. Even if it was just for a very specific debate on next steps here. I think the consensus is people understand the concept of independent review, but at one point that was going to be some large organization, and now it's been boiled back down to a 3-person panel appointed by the government. The exact same thing that the Liberals did with their political appointments of 3 people. So it would be nice to know. And I think opposition members, whether it be NDP or Liberals and Independents, to have a chance to get some additional answers from the government, because this is important and it's too important to let go. Open the House, answer questions about A, what exactly are we reviewing? Let's have a debate about the terms of reference, because no one party, no one government is perfect. There may indeed be some helpful ideas or suggestions coming from opposition members about what we need to consider in this terms of reference. And also, who we're talking about appointing. There may indeed be names that other members outside of government can put into the pile, into consideration, so that we get it right. Because that's always been what you hear, right? We've got to get it right. And I agree. We have to get it right. So let's open the House. When the Liberals reopen it for a 4-day session of debate and an opportunity to ask questions of representatives at JP Morgan Chase and of Jennifer Williams and others, I think it was helpful in trying to paint a bit of a better understanding of exactly what's on the table here inside the pages of the MOU. And I think it remains important. Because if we are going to delay and the quote-unquote take an opportunity to get it right, let's have contribution from all hands, all elected 40 members of the House of Assembly, and let's have some questions. Let's get a better understanding. And I'll add this last one before we go to the break. Again, I'm on side with the review. I understand the importance of. But what I will throw out there is, are we not better served with some layer of additional review when there's actual contracts in place, definitive agreements? Because right now, even if you hear from Mike Wilson, is the current structure of the independent panel is a major problem for him, in addition to some of the associated risks and downsides, as pointed out by Mr. Wilson. But in the MOU stage, Hydro-Quebec isn't obliged to give us anything. But when it becomes definitive agreements, all the different working parts of the expansion at the upper, with the potential for Gull, the 2 transmission projects associated with it, they'd all have to be in the definitive agreements. So we don't know what's being negotiated necessarily. We don't know if the progress on the negotiations has stalled. So getting the House reopened, I think, is a good starting point. And I will put that out there for your consideration, maybe a call on it. Are we better served to review the contracts, the binding definitive agreements, or are you happy enough with a further consideration or review of the Memorandum of Understanding? Because they are 2 different things. Let's get a break. And when we come back, plenty of show left for you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go. Line number 1. Good morning, Kim Kelly. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thank you so much for having me on again. So glad to have this avenue, right, to be able to promote our event.
Absolutely. Tell the folks what we're talking about this morning, Kim.
Hey, well, this year, It's the 21st annual vigil to remember our loved ones who died by suicide. And of course, we hold this vigil, Patty, to support family and friends who lost loved ones to suicide. People can join in person at St. Mark's Church, or they can live stream the event on St. Mark's Facebook page. And I can give you all of this information, right? But it's www.facebook.com/stmarksnl/. And people can add a photo to our slideshow, and they can email Juanita at juanita.mariesimmons@gmail.com or myself at kakelly@mon.ca. And we need those photos by December the 9th because, of course, we're only a group of volunteers. And Juanita and Kathy put together the slideshow, and we need to have all the pictures in and, set up according to the music, and all of those kind of things. And most importantly as well, we read the names aloud of our loved ones. Last year we read 231 names of people we're remembering, and I expect this year we're already at about 250, and so we read those names. So people can submit names to us, so they can send in names to me at kakelly@mon.ca, and we can take names right up into like midnight, or if I see them the next morning in time, we can do that until December 13th. The event itself is happening on Sunday, December 14th. So Sunday coming at 3 o'clock at St. Mark's Church, as I mentioned. And music, of course, as always, by Shelley Neville, Peter Halley, who come and volunteer their time every year to give us the music. And Dan Dillon comes and provides some music for conversation afterwards, because we, after the vigil, we invite people to bring coffee and tea and sandwiches, and we share in conversation and a fellowship in the church community space there. And so we're so delighted with that. And also to mention, when we do the online slideshow, we're doing things a little bit differently this year, because we read so many names now aloud, and we don't have matching photos for every person's name. So the slideshow will be going up after the vigil on St. Mark's Facebook page. And, of course, that slideshow is done to the music of the Ennis Sisters, Judy Brazel, and Shannon Power. So that's kind of how the event looks like.
Yeah, and you and I have had this annual conversation, and we're always happy to do it. How have the number of attendees increased over the years? Because for some people, whether it be the stigma associated with dying by suicide or people's own personal grief, which never really truly goes away, have the number of attendees grown or not over the years?
You know what? The number, we have grown. We started the event in Cape Royal in my hometown, really for my mom and dad, because, they really needed a space to come together, right? And my brother died in 2000, so there wasn't much conversation about suicide then. But because Cape Royal wasn't very central, we moved to the Mon Chapel, and we actually outgrew the Mon Chapel because that could only hold 200 people. Then we went to St. Patrick's Church, and of course, then St. Mark's invited us to their space. So we fill St. Mark's, church every year, but now, of course, our online attendees have grown, right? So COVID really forced us, for better or for worse, in a new direction. And, of course, we had to have our first during COVID. We had 10 people in the church, and so we had to start reading names aloud, which has now become the central part of our vigil, really. And so our online viewers have grown. So people watch, one year, the first year I think was during COVID, we had people watch from all over the country, because the beauty of it now is if you're not in St. John's, you can send the link to loved ones who are in BC and Alberta, Ontario, and people watch from all of those provinces. And sometimes if, people are in Florida, right, they can watch, or wherever they are. So the beauty of it is that if you're in Labrador, wherever you are, you can can watch the vigil. And if you can't make it at the time at 3 o'clock on Sunday, it will be available on the St. Mark's Facebook page for 30 days, right? Because that's the new Facebook regulations. You can only have allowed to that. We're so grateful to St. Mark's for hosting us and providing the space and giving us the live stream ability, because we never really would have had that anywhere else. So we're really grateful to them for that. So when it comes to because you asked about, you talked about stigma and you talked about all of those things. I mean, we hope that our vigil is helping to help people come together to remember their loved ones, because no matter, we know the reality is that our loved ones have died by suicide, but the reality is also that they lived, right? So, our loved ones, had degrees, or, they had wonderful jobs. They were involved in music and dance and in, whatever it was they were involved in, that we come together, to remember parents and spouses and, friends and colleagues, neighbors, members. We come together in different faiths, different sexualities, different gender identities. So from so many different diverse backgrounds, we come together. And, this is the one place that we can come together in support and solidarity to kind of support each other, right? To try to lessen that stigma and, that people feel, right? We know that when people die by suicide, there's so many questions they have and so many different things that, that people kind of go to right away, right? There's so much on your mind, right? I wrote a song about suicide loss, and, in that I talk about it's, like a sad movie, right? Scenes go over and over in your mind. But the one thing people, a message I guess I want to get out to people who've lost loved ones to suicide is you are not to blame. You did nothing wrong, right? No person is responsible in that way for the loss of another person. So it's really important that people kind of remember that, right? I know it's really hard, and I'm just one person saying it, but, I'm a social worker myself, and I know, right? I've supported people who've lost loved ones to suicide, and I'm also a survivor of suicide loss, having lost my brother. So I'm an example that if suicide happened in my family, and I was from a loving, warm family, it can really happen to anyone, right? So we really come together from all walks of life to end this loss. I mean, suicide is a community issue. It's more than that now. I mean, Patty, you've talked on your show, we've talked about all of the different areas, looking at the numbers and increases in places like the Gathering Place and the Center for Hope and, all the food banks. And mental health and addictions is really become, I believe we're in an epidemic for sure. It's a crisis, right? And together we're trying to come together to look at what we can do to our, I guess the vigil is our little part of supporting families and individuals who've lost loved ones to suicide.
The last one, and people ask me this question too, is, they would consider going, but they don't want to have to interact, or they don't want to have to speak, or they don't want to have to present. They simply want to be there and experience it for the first time. So there's nothing required of you other than if you want to submit your picture and the name to be read aloud and simply be in attendance.
Absolutely. And so people can do that. And if they don't want to have their name read aloud, they can just do that quietly. Like when we light the candles, people can, share their little name to themselves or silently, or they don't have to, because we really read the names aloud and show the pictures. But people can just come into the vigil. They can leave and exit, whenever they want. We also have, St. Mark's has a couple of quiet rooms. If things get too much, they can leave the vigil, and go out there for a moment. But there is no pressure on anyone. In fact, we have a set program. So we have people already assigned to read the names like Tina Davies, Joyce Smith, Carol Goswell, myself will read the names. Randy Crane who was in the Dinner Theatre up in Fairyland, who lost his nephew, will be one of our readers, as well as Ken Paraway, who lost his son, William. So lots of different people. Hopefully they won't mind me coming on talking about them this morning. But so we have, we have the program set aside, so nobody will get a chance to come in and speak, right? And then if people don't want to gather for conversation afterwards for coffee and tea, they can just make a quick exit. But we do have lots of people will come and gather and share in coffee and tea afterwards. And also people are invited to bring a framed photo of their loved one, especially now that we're showing the slideshow after the event. Then lots of people will come and bring a framed photo, and we'll put them right up in the front, and then they'll take those home again, right? But certainly no pressure for anyone. This is just an event. It's a beautiful and yet sad event too, right? The candle lighting is very poignant. Peter Halley will play music and we'll read aloud the names, and it's so sad to hear all the names, but, people are getting to hear the names of their loved one, and we are remembering them, because there's lots of places where people there's not always spaces for people to talk about their loved ones. And I guess I invite those listeners who know someone who's lost someone to suicide to invite them to talk about their loved ones. That's so important.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes when...
Kim, I'm going to jump in because of the time on the clock. Unfortunately, I'm late for the news. But just the details one more time about where, when for this year's event.
No problem. It's Sunday, December 14th at 3 o'clock at St. Mark's Church, 203 Logie Bay Road. And the live stream location is www.facebook.com/StMarksNL/.
I appreciate your time, Kim. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patty. Okay, take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, we are a little late for the news, but let's get that break in when we come back. Plenty show left for you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Well, after multiple delays, I think as many as 4 delays in getting the Muse Centre open, it has been open to the general public for quite a while. I believe the grand opening ribbon cutting ceremony is today. Former council member, currently Liberal member for Waterford Valleys, Jamie Corab, joins us on line number 1. And good morning, Jamie. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. Today is a great day. Thanks for having me on.
Happy to have you on. So we don't need to rehash all the reasons behind the various delays, of which I think there were 4 main delay announcements. But now that it's open, just give the folks some idea of what the new Muse Centre includes insofar as offerings and services compared to the old.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, Paddy, just to touch base quickly, this started in 2018 with, I checked Twitter, or the X. The first engagement we had was back in 2018, and I think we had about 17 stakeholder meetings with residents. So the original plan was to do it in the parking lot across from the current, or the old Muse, I guess it is now. But after some geotechnical work, it was determined that wasn't suitable. Fast forward 2021, we made the announcement there, and one of the reasons it was selected, they wanted to keep it in the same area because of the Boys and Girls Club and the programs that ran in there, but also, it's a real community hub with the dog park, skate park, outdoor walking trail, the softball field, which now has lights, and that Canadian Tire Jumpstart playground. And with that new facility, the grand opening was this morning. It was fantastic to see. All 3 levels of government were there. The Mr. Muse, who was named after Harry, was as he went by. His had 4 of his grandkids were there and spoke at it. But it's an amazing facility. As soon as you walk in, it's bright. You've got your racquetball courts, full-size gym. Originally, when this started, it was scaled at about $20 million. But having those engagement with the residents, they wanted an indoor walking track. They wanted that steam room. I actually had a few residents, and I was a ward councillor, said, if you don't get us a steam room, do not show your face around here. Jokingly, threateningly, but really not joking. But no, so it has that indoor walking track, which goes on top of the gym there. The pool is great. It's got a water feature there for kids. It's got a climbing wall. I mean, just there today, there had to have been about 40 or 50 seniors taking part in the water aerobics, which is fantastic to see. And apparently it's sold out every morning. And they have space for the Real program, which helps kids that need help with assistance in terms of sports and funding. And as well, like I said, the Boys and Girls Clubs. That was very important to make sure they had a space there because, the old Muse Center was the Boys and Girls Club if you go back 70 years. So an amazing facility. Anyone that hasn't been there yet, it's been open for a month or two. Highly recommend them checking it out. It's one of those things, Patty. When I went in today, I had the biggest smile on my face, knowing the location and the people it will serve. It's just fantastic.
I'm glad it's finally open, even after all the delays and what it meant for costs and budget. These types of facilities are part and parcel with being in the city, so I'm glad that it's finally open. I haven't had a chance to go have a look for myself, but that's somewhere in the near future, I would assume. Anything else on that front? Because I do have another question for you.
Yeah, no, just on that, thank the federal government. Like I said, it did go up about $10 million in price, and that was just with the rescope of it. So, originally it was the gas tax fund. Now it's basically, the Building Canada fund, which came out of. So, thanks to the federal government for that. And with this open now, again, encourage everyone to get out and check it out. It's a beautiful facility, and and I call it a more safe facility. A lot of the other facilities you go to, any random person can walk in. This, you have to be buzzed in. So that extra level of security, the accessibility there. If everyone knows the old Muse Center, it was a split entry. So much more accessible. And again, encourage everyone to go and check it out.
This question is in reference to North Shore fires. So when there was a committee brought together, you were the chair of it at the time. Now, we know we brought in representatives from the local service districts and what have you, and working towards plans to rebuild and what have you. Do you have any status update? Like, for instance, we talk about all the money that people, individuals and corporations made in the form of donations. Seems like none of that money has flowed. Can you give us some sort of status update for the folks on the North Shore who have these types of questions?
No, it's a really good question, Patty, and it's one now, I guess being in opposition, not privy to. Before the election, when I was part of that cabinet committee that you referenced, all the money coming in from Red Cross. So originally those were for things like the immediate things, people needed clothing, food, and all that. In terms of how the rebuild of that area were going to go, there was nothing earmarked for that yet. So moving forward now, they have a new committee that the PC's announced there, I think about 2 weeks ago, and they'll be moving forward on how that money gets allocated. I don't think there's many announcements from the Conservatives yet, provincial Conservatives yet, how that's going to move forward, but I know there is a significant amount of money there. If anyone, the fundraisings that were done in a number of capacities, as well as obviously the donations from the provincial government that they matched. There'll be things coming down the pipe, I'm sure, soon. But it's a question I'll be happy to put to that cabinet committee out there, because I know the MHA Riley, who's out there, he's involved as well as a few of the others. So no, it's a good question. It's time now that we start the conversation been happening. Having been out to Purcell-Lake and Carbonear Collegiate or Carbonear School, I should say, on a number of occasions, talking to the residents. Some are ready to rebuild, some are not, but regardless of what stage they're at in that rebuilding process, we do need to get things moving along on how that's going to shape the North Shore.
Yeah, now I know government doesn't really have any real authority to tell the Red Cross what to do and when to do it, but the government also has pledged different levels and layers of support as well. But a question coming from, say, for instance, the Premier or others to the Red Cross about the status of those charitable donations might be helpful to push this along, because I field questions fairly frequently from people who have been impacted by the Kingston fire, and I don't have any answers, and I can't find anyone who does have any answers.
Yeah, one thing I know for sure, when cause if people remember back to Fiona, when we had the Red Cross, I wasn't in government then, but just know from here that a lot of the money fundraised didn't stay in Newfoundland, because that Fiona, it majorly impacted Port aux Basques, but also Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. So with this one, it was specifically told to the Red Cross, any money fundraised here stays in the North Shore. And if there was the Pattyspan fire out in Central, if there was areas affected there, which wasn't near as much. So there is money there for it. I know that the current government, the provincial Conservatives, extended what we had in, which is basically the $1,500 if you needed money to find an apartment, and $1,000 if you were staying with family. So that was extended until I believe it's the end of March or April. I don't have it in front of me, but no new announcements yet on that. So no, like I said, it is time now. The government steps up, does what needs to be done, and really work with those stakeholders, whether it be the incorporated LSDs, unincorporated areas, because there is a lot of people out there, and I've talked to many of them, and they want some answers, and it's a fair question. So I'd love to hear from the government as well what has come from those meetings that they've had.
Appreciate the time. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Look, I mean, it's, of course, questions for government about government action or inaction. But I think as someone who made a donation, and for others out there, whether it be musicians or other corporate donations, whatever the case may be, you know, regardless of what you think about government support for people who lost X, Y, or Z in whatever fire, I mean, individuals made donations with a very specific purpose in mind, and that's to give financial aid and support to people who were impacted. I'd like to know where the money is. And I'm not suggesting anything untoward is going on, but people are asking me, and how am I supposed to know? But we'll keep asking the question. Let's get a break in for the news. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Bill, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. How are things this morning?
Doing great. How about you?
Not bad. Listen, I sent you an email with 2 pictures in there of text messages I received. One was yesterday, and the other one was earlier in the week about, one was a parking violation, and another was a speeding ticket. So I just wanted to make you aware that, or your listeners aware that it's a scam. I went to the RNC station, and they told me they would never send a text message. My concern was that one had a 709 number, which is the province, and the other one had a 519 number, which is Quebec. Just want your listeners to be aware that it's a scam, and it being this close to Christmas or any time of the year, to be careful.
Yeah, ServiceNL is not going to send out a warning about you have some refund available, some rebate. They don't do that. The RNC or other law enforcement, they don't send out warnings about speeding tickets, and they're all the exact same. As you were caught going 43 kilometers an hour in a school zone or what have you. So you're right, Bill, and I'm glad you're calling to warn people about the scam, because around this time of year, it seems to get worse.
Yeah, it's insane, and it looks legitimate. Like, it has the Newfoundland government picture on it and everything.
Yep. And the bit about the number, that used to be the dead giveaway, right? You'd look at your call display, and it would have this long string of like 18 numbers that you didn't recognize, so you knew, well, this is a scam. Now they've got this technological ability to spoof your number. It can look like it's coming from down the street, 709, 726, blah, 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 blah. But all of a sudden, now they've got that capability, so it's making it even more difficult to recognize the scams.
Exactly, and like I said, the last one I got yesterday was a 709 number,
yep.
So, and that's in our province. So be extremely careful when you're getting text messages, because if you're like me, I like to be certain on it and aware of it. The best thing to do is go to the RNC and get it checked.
Absolutely. At this stage, it's probably worth our while to consider most everything coming in a potential scam. If it's your bank or your telecom company or whatever, if they need you, fine. You can just hang up and call them back directly to make sure that you're on the right track and not being taken to the cleaners.
Exactly, because I called both numbers and I got voicemails.
Yeah, because there's no one there.
Exactly. And I just, like I said, thank you for letting me announce it, and Merry Christmas, and you guys be safe and be aware of these blessed scams.
Absolutely. Appreciate your time, Bill. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. It's nonstop. It's absolutely relentless. My email inbox is full of them. Every time I get a text message that says I either have some cash coming my way or a warning about some fine, they're all scams. And, you know, we mentioned the area code being 709 included in some of these scams. There's also a new area code here for the first time ever, right? 879 coming to town, because apparently the exchange has blocked the 709. So you may indeed getting a new phone number this day and age. You might be getting an 879 area code, which is apropos of nothing. Let's go to line number 2. Trina, you're on the air.
Hi, yes. I just wanted to talk about, I was working at HMP in a permanent position. When I took the job, I was led to believe that it was a permanent position. However, somebody grieved the position and I got laid off. And NAPE is not doing much for me, and I'm just at my wit's end on what to do. So I'm just, kind of being the squeaky wheel here now. And, our justice system need people. They don't need to be laying off people. And like I said, and NAPE doesn't seem to be getting anywhere with it.
What was the reason given to you for the layoff?
Because the person that grieved my position, apparently there was a grievance attached to the permanent position.
Oh.
So somebody grieved the position, and they won their grievance, and I got bumped out. And I was with another bargaining unit when I'm with government over 20 years. I left one bargaining unit for another, and because I left and went to another bargaining unit, I lost my seniority. But I thought, that's fine. I've got a permanent position. So I didn't think it, I didn't think it any harm. And, permanent position was attached to a grievance, and I was not told that.
Yeah, it'd be helpful information going in, because then you could always evaluate for yourself.
Yes. I would have definitely not taken the position if it was attached to a grievance, or they could have made it a temporary position, and I could have went back to my old position. But they didn't do either of those things.
Do you mind if I ask what type of position you held?
A classification officer.
And what does that person do?
Classification officer basically helps with release planning, also helps with placing various offenders throughout the prison where it would be most appropriate.
Oh, so to try to avoid well understood baked-in conflicts that some prisoners may have.
Yeah, and release planning. Okay. When they get released, make sure that everything is in place for them, whatever that may be.
And I'm sorry this happened to you, and it would have been nice to have all the information before you made the decision to take the job. But insofar as placement plans into the community or reintegrating into the community, give us some idea how that actually works, because that's an obvious concern. Someone coming out of prison, depending on how long they were in there, I suppose, the difficulty of reintegration can also be part and part with recidivism. So how does it work?
Well, we try to connect them to resources like John Howard Society and make sure they have somewhere to live. And we start with them inside, really, with John Howard. John Howard can start with them inside so that they're connected to them. And when they go outside, it will be less of a chance of recidivism.
And how about housing? Because one thing, whether we talk about anything under the sun, interaction with the healthcare system, criminal justice, issues of poverty, housing is a massive concern. How difficult is it to find offenders about to be released somewhere to live?
It is difficult. There's no doubt about that. Again, some of the organizations out there, John Howard, Stella Circle, we try to connect them with as many organizations as we possibly can to get, at least, get them with a roof over their head, even if it's just a shelter.
Yeah, the whole conversation about recidivism, crime and punishment is a very interesting, sometimes a very tricky conversation. I'm surprised to hear that no one at the union level is willing to do something on your behalf, even if it's an answer you don't want, saying, well, this is how it works, and off we go.
I do have, I'm feeding information to my employment representative officer, ERO, employee representative officer, and I'm feeding her information that I'm getting myself. I feel like I'm doing the work. Yeah,
and there's a reason why you pay your dues.
Yes, absolutely, and I just can't. Sometimes I don't get a response. It's ridiculous. Given the fact that I've been with government for 20 years plus, and I find myself unemployed.
Yeah, brutal. Last one, and I'm really sorry to hear of your circumstances regarding that. What you thought was a permanent full-time job, in working with the prisoners upon getting close to release dates, what have you. Did you ever find yourself scared or uncomfortable or fearful or whatever the right word is?
No, I haven't, no.
I appreciate you making time. I wish this wasn't the case. If someone's listening at NAPE, they obviously are familiar with Trina's file. Maybe, just maybe, get back to her and see if there's something can be done. And if nothing, tell her that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your time, Trina.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Yeah, all the circumstances of a job, I just think in the era of fairness, it's probably a good idea for everything to be known. Whether you're going in to replace someone who's on maternity or on long-term leave or on long-term disability, or simply a replacement job, or something attached to a grievance. Because we all, it's helpful to go in with your eyes wide open, know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Because as she said, had she known it was a permanent job with a grievance attached to it, she probably wouldn't have taken it. If it had been posted as a temporary job pending outcome of a grievance, she probably wouldn't have taken it. So I don't think there's anything unfair in the how job postings are labeled. So information is power. Let's get a break in. Final break of the morning. When we come back, still another segment available to you. Don't go away.
This is Open Line on the VOCM Big Land FM radio network.
Just scratch my head a little bit here. Someone just sent me an email saying, why can't our premier be more like this? And this was a reference to an article from Global Calgary about Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta. And the headline says, Alberta Smith says courts should not be gatekeepers on constitutional questions. What? We're not advocating for that, are we? Is for politicians to be the ones to evaluate the constitutionality of one thing or another? And this is all in reference to the potential for a referendum. So the decision was pretty clear, concluded that a referendum proposal contravened several sections of the Constitution Act, also said the Constitution doesn't say that you cannot hold a referendum on separation, but that it would not be constitutional, and so consequently would hold no weight. If not judges and courts to answer questions regarding the Constitution, doesn't that sound like a pretty, the essence of slippery slope stuff? I think we're already in an area where the threats of using the notwithstanding clause is not exactly what the notwithstanding clause intention was. I mean, provinces are using it pretty far and wide here now, even when it comes to collective bargaining. So there's going to be an issue in this country regarding organized labor, but the one in Alberta regarding notwithstanding was the teachers get sent back to work, where the contract is in the form of a take it or leave it, and the notwithstanding clause said it cannot be challenged in court for the term of the contract, which is 4 years. Now, I just find that to be an odd circumstance where you don't want constitutional questions answered by judges versus politicians. And you talk about, activist judges and what have you. My God, is there anyone more of an activist than a politician? I mean, every evaluation of the constitutional questions would simply come out in their favor every single time. Whereas that is not the case when you go to court to decide things regarding the Constitution. And if you want the Constitution opened up, whether it be for a variety of things, pick one, the role of the monarchy. There's a reason why people have been loath to open up the Constitution, because it becomes an absolute nightmare immediately. Even for things like, and I'll leave it up to you what you think the role of the monarchy should play in this country, given that things have changed. And I think there are plenty of questions about the role of the monarchy in Canada. But even just to have it questioned, whether or not we have an actual financial evaluation of how much it will cost, we'll set that aside for a second. You would have to get the agreement of the House of Commons, the Senate, and all of the provinces to reopen the Constitution to remove the monarchy. So is that something that all the provinces can ever agree on? Unlikely. I mean, federalism here in this country is tricky enough to begin with. Same thing if you talk about term limits for senators and the process to place people in the upper red chamber. I think the numbers there is you need the House of Commons, you need the Senate itself to also be involved in potentially shortening their terms. Right now, all the way to age 75 before it step down as a senator in this country. So you need both those chambers. You need, I think it's 7 out of the 10 provinces to agree. And that's going to be hard to accomplish, I would suggest. So there are fair conversations, there are fair questions about the Senate and the current process for people to be members of the Senate and the term limit stuff, the role of the monarchy. And yes, cracking open the Constitution to try to get some sort of modern day definition and some of the do's and don'ts and what the notwithstanding clause can be applied to. Boy, oh boy, because now all of a sudden it's baked into collective bargaining, which regardless if you're in a union, I'm not in a union, but I think that can be an issue. Then just look at the relationship between provincial governments and the federal government regarding unions. When the government was quick, based on conversations or concerns with economic blowback, when you had strikes at the rails, strikes at the ports, not all the rails, but strikes at ports, strike at some of the railways, it was the impact that it might have on the economy, and Section 107 in the Labour Act was used to send people back to work. Same thing when the threat to Air Canada flight attendants. The same conversation was going on. So if you hear from organised labour bodies on the provincial level and at the federal level, the relationship that has eroded to the point where there's even talk of general strike. There was a threat of general strike in Ontario just a few years ago. There's threats of general strikes in Alberta at this moment in time. Why? Because what has been there for a reason, you can like unions, you can hate unions, it doesn't really matter, is the fact is they have the right to bargain. And then on the federal front, they brought forward the no replacement worker legislation. It doesn't apply across the board, only to federally regulated industry. But, man, that relationship and the use of Section 107 and the use of the notwithstanding clause is bringing us to a point where organized labor, I think, is pretty fed up. And, of course, I'm not a member of a union, so I don't have any real actual skin in the game here on that one. But anyway, that's the lie of that particular land, just in my own opinion, and your opinion is welcome. And some of the folks who send me emails that are pretty much the same all the time, and this one is about, I knew you'd be too afraid to mention the Peace Prize that was given out last Friday afternoon at the FIFA World Cup draw. I didn't bring it up because it's not even a thing, right? It was basically a pacifier on a ribbon. I mean, it was part of the cringe of the whole performance. I mean, even though I think between the hosts and the skits that were done and the commentary on stage, which was all so awkward, and yes, there was plenty of cringe. The same emailer who questioned why I didn't give POTUS a shout out about his made up Peace Prize also went on to say, you know, all of a sudden now you hate Wayne Gretzky. I've never said for 1 second in my life that I hate Wayne Gretzky. I don't hate Wayne Gretzky. I had a Gretzky jersey. I cheered for Gretzky, closet Oiler fan because I'm a Montreal fan. But what I said is that he had a pretty embarrassing stint on stage. And I imagine if you ask Wayne himself, he'd probably agree. He knew the name of every single country that were going to be in the balls in his bucket. And he had the whole morning to figure out how to pronounce Macedonia and how to pronounce Curacao. So the fact that he fumbled it, I don't know, at this point, just the obvious. Had it been someone else on stage who was unable to pronounce the different countries that they had to read aloud, I'd feel the same way. So it had nothing to do with Gretzky's politics. It just had something to do with Gretzky's pronunciation and maybe a little bit of phonics. That's all. Final check on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. And even when some of the emails do feel a bit repetitive and or they're calling me names, bring it on. Always love getting a good email. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, Greg Smith, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.